attitude has always been, I'm just going to start acting like a crazy person and like fighting them to the death because they're probably, if they pulled a weapon on me, they're probably going to kill me anyway.
Right.
But I'm not going to let it be an easy thing for them to do.
No, I would totally freak out on somebody.
Well, she pleaded with him, of course, not to hurt her. And Jackson placed the duct tape over her eyes and mouth, led her to this remote area where he stood with her back to a tree. Then he duct taped her to the tree. Now imagine how horrible that is. You're in the woods, you're all alone, this maniac is taping you to a tree. And if you've ever been duct taped, not that I have that often, but I mean, it's like pretty impossible to like untape yourself. I know like in high school we had this prank where we like duct tape someone to a chair.
Right.
And they couldn't get up.
No, yeah.
There's like no tearing through the duct tape.
Oh, no, duct tape could totally render you immobile.
So I guess once he places her against the tree and duct tapes her, the duct tape on her mouth had started to come loose at this time. And then, of course, Stiles again is asking him, please don't hurt me. So he tapes her mouth shut again. He rips off her shorts, her underwear, and then he rapes her vaginally. And so Jackson's rendition did not mention the stun gun. Like he, when he's giving this full confession, he wants to get it off his chest. He never once mentions that there was a stun gun involved.
I wonder why.
But the evidence was presented at a trial, and he was pretty shocked, I guess, when they found out that, that they knew that he had done this. But he had taken that stun gun out, and he, placed it just above her left breast, and then, of course, several times, 9 times, in her pubic area.
Yes, many as 9 times within 6 inches of her pubic area.
Yeah, so after he rapes her, he's torturing her with the stun gun. Then the guy moves away from where she is to go look at his porno magazine and then masturbates. Okay, so the tape over Stiles' mouth has loosened again at this point, I guess, while, Jackson's over in the corner whacking it to jugs or whatever. I don't know. And she starts screaming because who wouldn't?
Yeah, who would?
Right? You've been stun gunned essentially in the pussy a couple of times. You've been raped.
Tied to a tree.
I mean, I don't know. If somebody stun guns my vagina, I'm probably going to be screaming a lot. I don't know. Sounds really painful. I mean, this is such a horrible situation, and I'm kind of making light of it a little bit, but not really. I mean, this is terrible.
This is horrible.
And so, she's screaming. He walks up to her again. He puts the gun to her head, and he shoots her. And that's all it takes. Just the one shot. And she's dead, right? So then that afternoon, after, he's had a joyful day, I guess, out in the woods, convening with nature and raping and murdering someone, he goes back to the Kmart, he returns the gun, and then gets a full refund.
What the hell? Nah, I love a frugal murderer. You gotta love that.
Yeah, maybe this dude can give us a list, some tips on murdering on a budget. Because, I've often thought about that, like watching Dexter, he's really invested. He's got the really nice, expensive knives. He's invested in all that expensive, heavy plastic sheeting.
$10,000 a year in sheeting.
I mean, right? So, murder can be expensive. But this guy has found a way to do it, as you said, in an economic fashion. So, he's fiscally responsible murderer.
Murdering on a Scrubs budget.
So, I guess during this entire confession, Jackson is crying. Boo-hoo-hooing. And the report of his confession indicates that at times during the interview, the officers couldn't even understand, like, what he was saying because he was so upset, and emotional and crying, the whole time, just hysterically. And that he did repeat many times during this confession that he did not mean to kill Stiles. And that's just bullshit.
It's total bullshit.
That's straight up bullshit.
He stalked her. He had the tools he would use to do this with him.
Then had the fucking audacity to take the murder weapon back to Kmart.
Took the damn thing back.
Like, what a fucking nut job, right? Well, a search of Jackson's home and cars, which was conducted, of course, with a search warrant, had led investigators to recover a functional stun gun. So he still had that on his, on his property, his person. He had a flashlight. He had a black ninja outfit. And a wrapper to an adult magazine, and they also found the partially empty box of .22 caliber rifle bullets. So this guy, I mean, it seems like he made a lot of plans initially, like going into, this murder. Like he had it all worked out, but yet the wrap up, the finale, like he wasn't too bright.
No, it didn't take him long at all to smoke him out.
Yeah, in his house. I mean, it was like...
It's like he had a big red arrows pointing the way.
You might as well just hand them over all the evidence. Here you go, guys, right?
But I didn't mean to.
So Jackson was charged in Buncombe County with first-degree murder, first-degree kidnapping, and a first-degree rape charge. So when he was arrested, of course, he did waive those Miranda rights, and he confessed completely, as we mentioned before. So this plays a pretty important role in this case because, of course, the corroborating evidence was found at his home, and he did get sentenced to death here in North Carolina.
As he should be.
But a judge reversed the confession or, said that the confession should be barred on an appeal and ended up, there was a lot of discussion about, having a new trial and that kind of thing. Because I guess at some point, he had asked for an attorney and then went ahead and confessed, even though they're saying don't say anything else.
Right.
You asked for an attorney, but then decides he wants to confess, even signed a secondary document waiving his rights.
Right.
But a judge was still like, yeah, that's not fair. We can't use that confession.
And that's crazy because I've seen other cases where obvious coerced confessions are upheld time after time, judge after judge.
Like the Making a Murderer?
Making a Murderer or the Paradise Lost.
Oh, yeah, the West Memphis 3?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. But this guy, just because he's blubbering about the crime that he did obviously commit, and they're going to throw that confession out? Wow.
Right. Well, the district attorney at the time was Ron Moore in Buncombe County.
Oh, well, that explains it.
Well, he actually, he's come out, in several interviews and has publicly said, this was not something that he wanted to do. He wanted this family, Karen Stiles' parents, who are, now older. And
right.
Had all this time, their daughter's been gone. And
I
can't imagine, being
you
her
never
parents.
get over that.
Right.
Not only is she gone, she was murdered, tortured.
And brutally
raped. Her last moments on earth.
Left, discarded in this very public setting.
I just couldn't imagine.
Taped to a tree, left naked in the woods for animals, for whomever to find. I mean, it's just like
the worst way to lose a loved one.
I just can't even imagine the way as a parent you could even process that.
You don't. I doubt you could ever.
That's got to be a hurt that I don't ever want to experience. I mean, just terrible.
So they had a little surprise for him even after that.
Yeah, so then Ron Moore, of course, he said this was not something that he wanted to do. He really wanted the death penalty to be in place. But instead of a new trial, Jackson ended up pleading guilty to lesser crimes with an agreement to serve 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah. But then, of course, nobody's told him, I guess, that he could face some federal charges too.
Yeah.
And he did. And he was sentenced again.
Go justice system.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty interesting, I guess, because in the last trial, which would have taken place, I guess, in the 2000s, like early 2000s.
Yeah, I believe it was around 07 or 8.
Something like that. Well, okay. I don't know. I was thinking
there was an appellant.
Okay.
Hearing at that point.
Well, there was a detective with the, I guess, the Buncombe County PD, a female detective, that made some comment to Jackson like, we may be seeing you again on some other murder charges.
Ah.
Yeah. Well, of course, a reporter heard this, I believe with the Citizen Times, and was kind of digging into that, what you mean about this. And there's this detective who had some theories that perhaps this was not Jackson's first murder.
Well, yeah, like you said, it wasn't just a simple opportunity or something that happened all of a sudden. He planned it. He bought the murder kit.
That's the thing that gets me is that it's like if he had been out in the trail, seen this girl, grabbed her, physically, choked her, strangled her,
right,
or bludgeoned her with a rock.
That doesn't make it okay.
No, but I might believe
that it was just something
this was more of a murder of opportunity.
Right.
That he didn't go out that day intending to murder somebody.
Or like he's truly
it just
messed up in the head.
Itself and, okay, I'm going to take advantage of the situation.
Right.
But to have constructed this kit, to go wait in a parking lot, to watch this girl, to stalk her.
Very calculating.
Yeah.
Very planned. And that just throws the whole mental thing.
That makes me feel like, okay, that's somebody who's maybe done this before.
Yep.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, who knows? Well, one of the cases that this detective kind of insinuated that maybe Jackson was a suspect in was Pamela Murray. Now, Murray was this industrial engineer. She was 23 years old, and she was abducted from a parking lot at the Asheville Mall. And this would have been Valentine's Day, 1987. And Murray's body had gunshot wounds to her head and the back, and she was found in this deserted road in a wooded area in Otene, North Carolina, later that day. And I remember that case.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that.
I remember this girl being abducted from the mall, and then they found her, dead. I mean, I was a kid when that happened, but, I remember, like, my mother being in shock about this because she's like, oh, my gosh, we go to that mall all the time. Like, what if somebody did come up to us with a gun? Oh, it was like something that really had women in the area running scared because we just didn't have that kind of thing. I'm not saying we didn't have murders, but we just didn't really have stuff like this happen very often. So when it did, it was very shocking.
Very shocking.
We lived in a community that probably up until maybe 10, 15 years ago, people didn't lock their doors.
No, there's still pockets of people,
No, I know people who don't even have a house key, like a physical key for the lock because they're like, oh, we don't ever use it, so we don't even have a key to the house. Just go on in. I've heard that more than once. Of course, I've also heard that from some relatives who are laying in wait in the house with an arsenal of guns. So should an intruder or someone just break up in the house, they're probably going to get...
they hope somebody will break in the house so they can shoot the shit out of them.
Yeah, that's what we call mountain
Use some of that damn ammo.
Around here. So getting back to the case here. So another unsolved murder that was pretty similar to the Karen Stiles murder was that of a woman named Beverly Sherman. And she was a 17-year-old convicted prostitute. And she was last seen January 20th, 1987, getting into a car behind the Asheville Civic Center. Which, if you're from this area, you probably remember back in the day that, like, downtown Asheville was not like it is today.
No, it wasn't quite as friendly.
You remember, downtown Asheville, 70s, 80s, boarded up.
Yeah.
There were prostitutes.
Down there under the bridge around Broadway.
Crime, Lexington.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was where, like, the ladies of the evening were. I remember that. And there was also that really seedy motel that was right behind the Civic Center.
Yep.
And if you're familiar with Asheville, that's what's now the U.S. Cellular Center.
Yep.
But at the time, it was the Asheville Civic Center. There was this shitty motel right off the highway, and it was literally like the pay-by-the-hour kind of place.
Yeah, it was pretty gross.
And drugs and just super skanky place.
Well, it looked gross from the street. I'd never been there.
Well, I'd heard stories from people.
My friend told me.
Exactly. Hey, I was too young to be procuring sex workers at that time.
Me too, but it's certainly been gentrified and is different now if you visit Asheville.
It's
that whole area is
different.
different.
Yeah, I think now that hotel is like
it's some high end and there's brewery on every corner. And coffee shops. But back then, but I do find it interesting, they're talking about this victim of someone's victim here, but I like how they have to put in convicted prostitute in the description.
Well, right.
That can lead to some evidence of how she was, why she was preyed upon and things like that. But it's funny how they always got to make sure and label the women.
Well, they really do. And I guess I see, as you're saying, I see that twofold. One, it's like, okay, she was a prostitute, and we all know that a lot of murderers, serial killers,
they prey on that community.
They target sex workers,
yes, they do,
drug addicts because they don't have family, really
or
relatives,
any recourse
friends,
with the law or anything.
If they kind of go up, they go missing. Oh, well, they're transient. There's just not a lot of
nobody cares
merit, I guess, to their disappearance,
right?
Which is sad that we see these people and other killers, like I know Robert Hansen in Alaska. He described these women as their throwaways.
Yeah,
and sadly, that is kind of how our society views them.
It's true.
So Beverly Sherman, probably, I'm guessing at this time behind the Civic Center, knowing Asheville in the 80s, probably hooking, right?
Probably.
Gets into a car, and then she was killed the same day by somebody who shot her in the head, but her body was not found until April 26th.
Wow.
So she's kidnapped in January, her body's found in April. So that's a couple months. And the Stiles case, even the detective is saying this does not look like somebody's first offense, that it's too organized, it's too well planned out.
Right. So
I'm thinking, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But then again, here's this guy planning out this elaborate, where I'm going